Hello, Sioux Falls, and welcome to this edition of Planning Preview. My name is Kurt Johnson. I'm the current chairman of the city's Planning Commission, and with me is Jeffrey Schmidt of Planning Services. How you doing, Jeff?
Good, good.
Very good. We'll go ahead and get rolling into our agenda items here, but before we do, we always start off with a topic of interest, and I think this time, Jeff, why don't we talk about density, as in housing density?
Yeah, it's been kind of interesting. You know, it's been a topic that the trades, the journals always talk about out there, and so we've kind of talked about it in-house quite a bit. But the issue really is, from a neighborhood standpoint, as a citizen standpoint, how many housing units, what's the density in my area?
Sure.
You know, nobody ever talks about it like that, but you know, they're like, oh boy, there's a lot of people in this area. Okay, that's density.
Sure.
You know, now times have changed. Just visited with my mom and dad, and where they live in Hilltop is probably a lot denser than where you and I live on the west side of town. I mean, everybody now needs more land. Everybody needs to have bigger lots, and it's changed. But the old traditional lots were much smaller, so it was denser before than it used to be.
Right.
Now everybody thinks they need a lot more land, and it gets less dense. And at the same time, then we get criticized from our stands. Why does the city allow all this sprawl? Why do you have sprawl everywhere? And I'm like, what's this sprawl that you talk about? Do you want us to be dense, or do you want us to sprawl? Which way is it? So the facts are really, when we talk about this, and this is the topic that I thought is, typically we have 3 units per acre. That's what people expect and see in the city of Sioux Falls. You have an acre of ground and you get 3 units on it. And if you go back and see how big your lot is, typically 1/3 of an acre is what people get. Then there's those other people that get an acre of ground and they put a house on it, or you get a bigger lot and you get more than 1/3 of an acre and you get a lot more land. But most people get 1/3 of an acre and you get 3 lots per an acre. So that's typical density. In New York City, you're going to get a lot more units per acre, you know, and maybe Harrisburg or Canton, you get a lot less, but 1/3 of an acre or 3 units per acre. Now, I quickly did some math for people. Again, they go, that still doesn't mean much to me, Jeff. Okay, on a section of ground, okay, and again, farmers in Sioux Falls, people that grew up with farm, section of ground, 640 acres, so 3 units per acre, you're gonna get about 1,900 units in that section of ground. Now you start going, okay, wow, okay, and then from my perspective, I know for census, okay, when they do the census, that there's 2.4 people per housing unit. Okay, so now we got 1,900 housing units in this section of ground between 26th Street and 41st Street, between Minnesota and Western. You know, between these sections, you got 1,900 housing units. You get 2.4 people in. So now all of a sudden we got 4,500 people living on a section of ground. In the city of Sioux Falls, on each section of ground, we have 4,500 people living.
Wow.
Now you go and you look at Del Rapids or Canton and these other smaller towns, and you got 45. That's a lot of people living in Sioux Falls, and now that gives a people perspective or understanding of what we're talking about in Sioux Falls. We'd really like to see more density versus places in West River or in the farms, but we're not nearly as dense as Chicago, Omaha, New York. But it gets people going, okay, now I understand what you're talking about with density.
Sure.
So it's been interesting. And again, we hear about it a lot when we're doing planning items. And residential units come up to Planning Commission and they ask, but it's always about, well, that's too many or not enough housing units. It's really about density.
Sure. Well, we don't need New York density. I'm,
Yeah.
I'm one opinion,
Okay.
but we don't need that.
Yeah, even Chicago, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Well, great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff. Well, let's roll into our agenda items here. Our first one we're talking about is a rezone from RT1 single family residential traditional district to RD2 townhome residential suburban district, 200 block of North Nesmith.
Yeah, we've been talking about this project, I think, for a while, or this area for a while. On Nesmith, RT is your traditional lots, and they're much smaller, but they would like to build more of a fourplex or a townhome development. So they need to rezone it to RD, And they actually have the proposals so people can look at it. But it's around 8th Street. And they're going to be, the housing units are going to be on Nesmith, and there's going to be garages in the alley. And so they'd put 4 units on these multiple lots. It's not one, but it's 2008 or 208, 212, 214. So they'll put 4 units here as a 4-unit townhome.
Excellent, excellent. Our next one, rezoned from Ag to the RS Single Family Residential Suburban District, North Cactus Drive, south of East Imani Ridge Place.
I just thought about this. Sometimes this happens when
Sure.
I get going. So I talked about density earlier. The first item, we were really changing the density, getting 4 units. This is up in the northeast part of town, Ag to RS, but this is really large lots. This is the opposite side of density. So this is Imani Ridge, Imani Place, and they're doing a cleanup rezoning. There's a little remnant piece of ground that they're changing to RS, but these are really large single-family homes.
Sure, sure, very good. Do they already exist there, or is this
No,
gonna
they're
be
building them.
Very good.
Or they're zoning them. They've already annexed them in the city of Sioux Falls. They're zoning them, and then they'll build the housing probably in the spring.
Very good. Our next item, a rezone from O Office District to I-1 Light Industrial for allowed forms, 4500 block of West 59th Street.
This is one of the more new rezonings, because the other ones were kind of a cleanup in an existing neighborhood. This is at 59th and Louise, or 59th and Solberg, so down by the interstates on the south side of town. And everything down there is either office or industrial, and so they went from office to industrial to do maybe a larger building.
Sure. Yeah, just like no manufacturing, just kind of storage and such like that, distribution.
A lot of the areas down there, they're large financial centers, they're large offices, and so they can have bigger buildings with more shift workers. They work, 3/8, 24 hours a day.
Very good. Our next item, a rezone from the AG Agricultural District to RA2 Apartment Residential Moderate Density Districts to the RA2 Apartment Residential Moderate Density and C2 Commercial Neighborhood District. Denise, I give her a lot of credit when she has to rattle all these off. East 85th Street and South Minnesota Avenue.
You're right. Our city clerks do a wonderful job for us at Planning Commission and City Council. This is a cleanup. At 85th in Minnesota, it's the northeast corner, but it's a little bit off to the east. They rezoned it 2 or 3 months ago, and they set their property lines, but now that they're getting ready to build, the property lines are off a little bit. I mean, just in our world, a smidgen. Okay,
Sure.
So they need to adjust their property lines, as you kind of read, so that they can build as they already rezoned it. So it's a cleanup from their standpoint.
Very good. Our next item, a rezone from unzoned to the Downtown Planned Unit Development District for allowed forms at South Franklin between East 6th and East 8th Streets.
This one's similar to the previous one, but a little bit different. And again, the exhibits will really show this well. In the downtown area, as a cleanup, there's the rail area that's being relocated because the city has this rail project. And when the rails remove themselves and are no longer there, it needs to be rezoned into the downtown area. Right now, there's rail lines there and they're unzoned because they're not commercial, they're not residential, they're not office, they're rail lines and they're unzoned. But if they're no longer there, what should they become? So you need to rezone them into the downtown areas.
No.
So they're just long little snippets.
Exactly,
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yep.
I'll switch gears here a little bit to conditional uses. We have a conditional use permit application in the DD2 form for a family daycare, 3100 block of South Lincoln.
At this point, and again, I'll just take a step back, we have all these items that are on Planning Commission should stay on the agenda, but they may not. So always feel free to contact our office to check the agendas before the meeting. But we have 3 conditional uses on our agenda right now. And conditional uses are items that they're in the zoning areas, and this one again would be zoned residential, but they're not permitted uses. They have to go through a conditional use. So this family daycare would be allowed if they have the signatures. If they don't have the signatures, they go to a conditional use. The conditions for family daycare are that as long as the health and safety of the child is addressed, then it's allowed use. So they have to look at the conditional uses of the health and safety of the children.
Very good. On that note, a conditional use permit, switching gears here a little bit, for on-sale alcohol beverage establishment within 500 feet of a sensitive use, 1000 block of South Cleveland.
This is at 18th and Cleveland. It's an existing service center, so a gas station in common ease. So the gas station at 18th and Cleveland is operating, but they want to add to that gas station a on-sale alcohol establishment, because that's what we have to call them in the planning office, but it's a video lottery. And with
Sure.
video lottery, if you want video lottery, you got to serve them a beer. That's the way the licenses work.
Sure.
So, but again, if they were in a commercial area, not near anything, they would never need a conditional use because they're zoned commercial. But since they're within 500 feet of sensitive uses, which in this case are single-family homes, you need a conditional use.
Very good. Our last item here, a conditional use permit for an accessory dwelling unit in the side yard located at 11 Riverview Heights.
This is a residential area, zoned RS, and it's about 21st and Kiwanis, and again, you can see it on the exhibits, which is really nice, but they're building an accessory unit, which is accessory to the house, and since it's next to the side yard, they need to have a conditional use.
Sure. Pretty straightforward there,
Yeah.
so very good. Well, that's the extent of our agenda items for today. This particular meeting, where these will be discussed in the public forum, will be October 4th. And if you have any questions in the interim, please feel free to contact the planning office. But otherwise, we'll look forward to seeing you all then. Make it a great day, Sioux Falls.